Thank you again for joining me. I'm Pat Kiernan. This is Pat's Papers. We do this every weekday morning, going through the nation's newspapers to find some of the highlights for you. Here's some of what we found for you today. Sheer delight on the front page of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. The Steelers are the lords of the ring after their Super Bowl winning touchdown with 35 seconds on the clock. The Steelers are the first team to win 6 Super Bowls. That big catch at the end helps Antonio Holmes to become the game's MVP, but James Harrison's going to get a big piece of the spotlight, too, for his 100-yard interception return. It was the longest play in Super Bowl history. In Arizona, the one-word headline on the front page of the Republic is heartbreak. Columnist Dan Bickley says the mood has gone from red to blue with the Cardinals' loss. Of course, there's almost as much in the papers about the entertainment surrounding the game as the game itself. Bruce Springsteen played Born to Run at halftime, just minutes after James Harrison's 100-yard run. The Florida Sun-Sentinel says this may have been the best halftime concert ever, rivaling Prince 2 years ago. Chicago Tribune reviewer Greg Kot comments on Jennifer Hudson's first public performance since her mother was killed. Kot says with the national anthem, Hudson announced she was back in dramatic fashion. The front page of the San Francisco Chronicle plays the game action at the top of the page, the advertising action at the bottom of the page. Pop culture critic Peter Hotlob comments on the number of ads that delivered a violent punchline just in the first quarter. There was a guy who got hit by a bus, there was an electrocution, a golf club to the head, a ski accident, and an employee thrown out a 4-story window. There doesn't seem to be much consensus on the best ad of the night. New York Times ad columnist Stuart Elliott says advertisers seem to play it safe this year by leaning to all that physical comedy. So how do you get a swanky apartment in this economy? Join the Navy, says the Los Angeles Times. The front page story says the newest military accommodation in San Diego features a rooftop swimming pool, views of the bay, and a cafe equipped with Wi-Fi internet. When it comes to caring for ailing patients, men are stepping up. A Columbus Dispatch story shows that men now make up 40% of family care providers in the U.S. That's up from 19% in 1996. With some cold weather recently, the Baltimore Sun's warning readers about the danger of frostbite. When you feel that numbness in your fingers or toes, it's time to get inside for a while. Doctors note that most people heed that warning from their own bodies. Many of the frostbite cases involve people who are homeless or intoxicated, although others require treatment simply because they didn't take proper precautions. A report from Jerusalem in the Washington Post, a key issue in the upcoming Israeli elections is whether the war ended too soon. The story says elections in Israel often turn on a single question, which is who looks tougher on national security. Plenty of domestic political news in the Post this morning. A political piece at the bottom of page 1 looks at President Obama's failure to get Republican support in the House for his stimulus plan. So will this change his approach in the future? The story looks at his past for signs of how he might respond. Okay, my favorite line from any newspaper today from the Washington Post. It says, this just in, Martha Washington was hot. Or at least hotter than we thought. Anthropologists took a 1796 portrait of Mrs. Washington. They aged her in reverse to come up with a guess of what she looked like in her 20s. Chinese officials admitting that birth defects are increasing at an alarming rate, and a major reason seems to be degradation of the environment. A story in the LA Times says coal is a big factor. The birth defects are highest in coal-producing regions. Defects up nearly 40% between 2001 and 2006. That coincides with the country's explosive economic growth. New York Times today, the lead story about welfare across America. 18 states cut their welfare rolls last year, which really doesn't fit with the rest of the economic picture. The Times says this is raising questions about how the welfare system is responding to hardships. We learned about Steve Martin's banjo in the Times this morning. The comedian has had a long interest in music. He's teaming up with Vince Gill and Dolly Parton, among others, for his bluegrass album. It's available for purchase as a download on Amazon.com. Speaking of things you might not have known about someone famous, the Times has an interesting piece about Michael Dell, the computer mogul, bought a landscaping business in 2006. And he's been doing quite well with the company called Valley Crest. The front page headline in the New York Post is Pot of Gold, the Michael Phelps apology, after the British newspaper photo that showed him smoking marijuana a few months back. New York Post columnist Andrea Pizer says the Olympic swimmer has added his name to a long list of rich, arrogant, dim-witted celebrity jocks who just can't live up to their hype. Clever submission on page 3 of the Post. The newspaper asked Newman to offer his solution to the troubles at the post office. Actor Wayne Knight says his Seinfeld character would be opposed to 5-day-a-week mail delivery because he'd have to work harder. Finally, according to the Los Angeles Times, Hollywood did its part in stimulating the economy last month. In a country seeking escapism, the American film industry has had its biggest January ever. The Times says movies are a relatively cheap escape from the drumbeat of layoffs, bankruptcies, and other bad news. And that's a look at just some of what's in the newspapers across the country this morning. I'm Pat Kiernan. We do this every weekday. patspapers.com for a complete list of all the newspapers and the links to the individual stories we featured today.